Good evening, class and professor. My name is Robin Bowman, and today I am presenting my Undercover Boss presentation on the business Checkers and Rallies. If you don't know what Checkers and Rallies is, it's a double drive-through restaurant. It is located in 30 states across the country. It employs over 20,000 employees. It was first established in 1985 under the name Rallies, and then in 1986, they decided to create a duplicate restaurant with similar menus called Checkers. But in 1999, they decided to merge both of the restaurants together, and is what we know today as Checkers and Rallies. The CEO of Checkers and Rallies' name is Rick Silva. Rick Silva has prior CEO experience. He was the CEO of Burger King internationally for over 13 years. At the time when the show aired in 2012, he stated that he was recruited 5 years prior by Checkers and Rallies to be the CEO. Rick Silva is Cuban American. His family was the first Cuban American family to move in his neighborhood, and because of this, he was bullied by the children in the neighborhood. But his mother told him to stand up for himself, and he stated that she told him, "Don't ever let anyone treat you with disrespect." So he decided to pick a fight with the kid in the neighborhood who had been bullying him, and even though he lost the fight, he stated it shaped him for the rest of his life. And I thought this was important information for us to know because it definitely influenced him as a person and as a leader. So beyond Checkers and Rallies and Burger King, Rick does actually have a background in business. When he was a child, his parents decided to quit their jobs and to drain their life savings, and they opened up a pharmacy, and he had to work in that pharmacy with his family. And he stated that this was his first impression of business and where he learned to love business. So it will be interesting to see what type of perspective he has on leadership and what type of leader he is. So unfortunately, I picked an episode that doesn't air anywhere online for free or any of the clips. I will include some bonus scenes that I was able to find on YouTube later on in the presentation. You would also hear a couple audios that I will include of the actual show. But for now, I will just try to describe to you who Rick Silva is and some of the influential characters that are seen in this particular episode. So that when we break down leadership and we break down the definition of love in the verb context, we know that the qualities are pretty much the same. We all know the famous quote, "Love is patient, love is kind, love is not puffed up or arrogant." So was Rick truly a servant leader? We know that he started off in the business when he was young, and he said that this is where he first had his first love of the business. So did he continue to have servant leadership? He was a perfectionist, and he stated that he did not like to lose at all. He said he loves to compete, and he loves to win, and he hates to lose. As a perfectionist, we know that one of the traits of being a perfectionist is that they can be very arrogant. But it was interesting to see Rick did not have this particular trait. In fact, he mentioned that when he first came aboard at Checkers and Rallies, that he wanted to bring on people that he thought would deliver. So I thought this was important because he didn't feel like he was the only person that could influence the business. I thought Rick was very passionate about the business. He stated in the introduction that he took it very personal when a customer's food was wrong. So customer service was very important to him. But Rick was sitting at the top. So really, what did he know about his customers? He stated that he got his feedback from his customers in focus groups by doing surveys to see what his actual customers needed. But I think Rick had some humility when he decided to do this show, and he knew that he had to go in the actual restaurants to make an assessment and to reevaluate things. When we refer back to James Hunt's The Servant, we know that old paradigms exist, but in order to be a servant leader, that mindset really needs to change because the CEO sits at the top and they're far away from the customer. When Rick Silva decided to go on the show and to become Alex Garcia, he was giving up that old mindset, and he was taking a chance basically to go in the restaurants and to see what was working and what was not working. Rick's goal was to sell more product and to sell more product fast. So he had to go in and basically see what tools and what type of leadership and what barriers he was facing in each of the restaurants. So there were three scenes that were broken down where Rick Silver went in as Alex Garcia to make an assessment about his business and the changes that may have been needed. The first scene actually though was the most powerful because he went in there and he actually had to come out of disguise. You're going to be introduced to Todd, who was a crew member who had been working with the company for a year and a half. He basically had to train himself. There was no training there, but he has a lot of passion about his job and why he's still employed there. And it's basically because he wants to take care of his mother. So he brings his paycheck home to help his mother out. And then you're going to be introduced to the manager whose name is Steven. And Steven is observed to be doing a lot of shouting and he's disrespectful and he has an attitude. He doesn't really see himself as a part of the team. So I'm going to play a clip from the actual episode where Steven and Todd and Alex are communicating.
Do that one. They weren't following our procedures, and so that when they were preparing the product, they weren't preparing it the way they're supposed to prepare it.
Todd, sir, I need you to take trash out. No problem.
I kept hearing the general manager barking orders.
Todd, sir, I need you to drop what you're doing. I need you to take some trash out.
And then I heard it again.
How many hours do you have right now? So if you go on overtime, I can take you outside and beat you up, right?
Todd, is this what usually happens? You try to do something, someone's calling you all the time?
I can't tell you right now. I need you to drop what you're doing. Take out some trash. Can you please?
He needs to help me here. Is that okay?
No, you're going to go with him.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
You always does? Yeah, that's how he...
Like he was telling people they were going to get in trouble, they didn't do their work?
He's a bit of a... I try not to, pay attention to it so much.
I couldn't work in a place like that. I really could not work there. I couldn't work there for 10 minutes. I would never let somebody talk to me like that.
It's my
Why
job.
do you keep working for Checkers?
Because I do it because I need to help my mom.
How does it make you feel?
Like I'm worthless.
Let's go talk to him.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I want to talk to him. Come on.
I don't think so.
I want to talk to him. Let's go.
So basically you hear Steven in the background shouting. He's doing a lot of yelling. He's disrespectful. He's just demanding. So you don't get to actually see the visual. But in the actual episode, he's observed to be just standing there. He's holding a clipboard and just giving a lot of demands and directions. He's not at all engaging. He's not participating. And then I'm going to play a little bit of the audio when actually Alex gets to interview Steven to ask him what is the cause of his behavior and why does he lead his crew in the way that he does.
Steven, is that your name, sir?
Steven, yes, sir.
Can I talk to you for a second? Of course. I might have an opportunity to join Checkers and Rally system.
Okay.
What excuse is there to talk to people without being respectful to them? What excuse do you think that was there?
I don't think I was disrespectful. You have to talk up. They will not listen to you unless they.
Who's they?
The crew.
Why would I want to work for you with the way you talk to people inside there? The first hour that you talked to me that way, I would leave. I wouldn't even leave my name tag in my... I would walk out the door and never come back.
Let me ask you a
How would
question.
that make you feel?
I would say that you couldn't handle the job. You do what you gotta do to get them to listen to you. You run them, they don't run you. I came into this company just like you. Wants to be nice, low tone. It doesn't work. If I don't scream at them, they don't listen to me. But I'm not gonna let you continue telling me I'm disrespecting my crew.
Something seriously wrong with him. He needs to stop. I don't know. He out there trying to talk to Stevens about something.
Have you been in the fast food business before?
No, I haven't. Maybe that's
Have
my
you been in
problem.
the restaurant business at all?
I've studied the restaurant
No,
business.
not studied. Have you any experience in the restaurant business?
Actually, I do. I'll be honest with you. I do have experience. I'll tell you exactly. I have been in the restaurant business for over 20 years, and I've been in the fast food business for over 20 years. I'm CEO for this company. I know exactly what it takes to run a restaurant like this, and guess what? I know the right way to do it, and I know the wrong way to do it. And what I saw here today is completely the wrong way to do it. I was asking people questions about what was the right button, and they didn't know what the answer was. When you see our advertising, do we say, hey, we sell lukewarm burgers. Come get them. Is that you think what's going to sell burgers? No, sir. I guarantee you, half the people that came to this restaurant today didn't get hot product.
So I definitely think that this particular scene was an example of power versus authority. I think that Steven, as a manager, thought that power was the only way that he can influence his employees to do the right thing. We know that power takes no skill. It goes on further in the video to explain that he got the job as the general manager while he was training to be assistant manager, and he was basically told that he had to leave that training to be the general manager. So he didn't have training himself. And so when he came aboard, he didn't have the skill. And he thought that that was the only way that he could actually manage his staff. He didn't actually see himself as a part of the crew. He referred to them as they, which meant that he thought he was on one level and that his crew was on a different level. So he didn't have any skill. He didn't use any skills. He didn't have any way of he didn't have any influence on his particular crew to get them to do their job. So as the show continued, we get to see Rick going as Alex Garcia into 2 other restaurants, and things kind of turned around for him. And as he talked about in the beginning, he talked about love. So in these other restaurants, the atmosphere was a lot different than it was in the first restaurant, where there was just basically a lot of power, and the environment was very unhealthy. In the next 2 restaurants, I'm going to play clips from both of them. You're going to meet 2 of the employees. One is a manager, her name is Joyce, and the other one is a crew member, her name is Joanna. And you're going to see basically how they operate in Checkers and Rallies, and to see how it was different than it was in the first experience.
Hello. Hi, I'm looking for Joyce.
Give me 1 second, please.
Sure. We've doubled our late night business since I've been CEO at Checkers and Rallies. Hopefully I'll find ideas in this restaurant about how we continue to grow late night. It's our #1 priority. Hi, are you Joyce?
I sure am. You must be Alex?
I'm Alex.
You're my new trainee. Okay, let's clear the doors. Welcome to my home. Okay, coming through. Big woman coming through. Mr. Alex, are you manager in training? I don't sell burgers and fries. Anybody can sell burgers and fries. I sell you hospitality. Hello, my dear. What can I get for you, honey? Number 12? Okay. Now that's your chili dog, right? Yes. Now that comes with onions. Go bad breath. Is that okay? Yes. Oh, there you go. It's going to be $6.72, honey. Okay. You rock, Mama. Have a good one.
Okay.
Okay. I have some stuff I have to take care of. I'm going to be just away for a couple of minutes. But what I want you to do is fly solo. You have any questions? Anybody here will be able to help you. You've got Mr. Mark right here. You've got Mr. Shane over here. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. You're going to be all right.
Thank you, Joyce. Hi, sir. How are you tonight?
Let me get a medium number 5, please.
Medium number 5? Sure.
Thanks. Heavy mayo, heavy ketchup.
So, unfortunately, you don't get to see the actual show, the visual, but what you do observe, if you are able to ever see it, is that the environment was completely different here. And it wasn't that they didn't have any barriers. Later on in this particular episode, this particular scene, they do have issues with the intercom system, with taking orders. And then she addressed an issue with not the customers not having the items on the menus that they particularly like. But the environment was completely different. Joyce was always kind. She was always authentic, and she was always respectful. And you saw her crew members actually smiling, and it looked like they loved their job. And I have a quote here that states that was in James Hunt's The Servant. One of the primary works of love is paying attention to people. So I think that Joyce had a different influence on her crew because she paid attention to the people. Not only did she pay attention to her staff, she also paid attention to her customers, and she was able to convey that to Rick as Alex.
So tell me, if I became a franchisee and I'd work part of it, but I need people to work for me, who would I hire? Who do you think would be a perfect manager? You. If tomorrow you were just a manager, what would you do? How would you do things?
I would warn my crew members. Because with Checkers, it's like the managers get bonuses and the managers get this. They didn't get where they got by themselves.
No way.
Let them know, hey, I appreciate you for doing this for me. You know, and I just feel like they just don't treat us, rewards your crew. We've never been rewarded. Never. The whole 7 years I've been with Checkers.
You haven't gotten?
No, I make $8 an hour. That's why I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't even look forward to getting paid. Honestly, I don't. And then if I was to take a manager position,
That
it won't
sounds
be
like-
nothing but like a 50 cent or a dollar raise.
That's the only difference when you get a manager?
Yeah, I mean, Checkers for their managers off at like $9.
Is that it?
Yes, you have other places that start managers off
Higher?
11, 10. Yes, they start their crew members off at $9 and $10. Other places.
It was enlightening to see her perspective on the incentive structure. And what she allowed me to realize is we may not have a compensation program that takes into consideration the Johannas of the world.
That's another reason why I never took a management position. You have to have a reliable transportation.
You got car problems?
This car cuts off on me. I never want to jump in to do something if I know I can't handle it. I know I'm having car trouble right now. Why would I jump into being a manager?
Johanna is a magnificent individual. We're lucky to have her.
You gotta go back in here to work.
And I feel that I need to find a way to continue to grow her because she has much more capacity than we're using today. That's a risk. If we're not using her to her full capacity, somebody else will see her and they will.
So I think in this particular scene, when we met Johanna, we saw that Johanna basically was a person who had a lot of forgiveness, even though she felt like they were wronged as employees. The crew members who were at the bottom didn't receive any bonuses. She still did her job, and she did it with appreciation, and she wanted to feel appreciation. And she did it also too with a lot of selflessness. She met the needs of others, which meant that she was working to serve her customers. And overall, I think that Rick realized that he wasn't meeting the needs of his staff. He felt that he wasn't showing Johanna and his other crew members appreciation, and he realized that he needed to do more. He knew that Johanna was a good employee, and that in order to keep her and to grow her, he needed to do more. He needed to show her that her commitment to the company wasn't going unnoticed. So, in conclusion, I think Rick had the idea of what servant leadership was all about. In the beginning, I started to see this as he talked about him growing up in the business. I think this is why he responded the way that he did in the first scene, because he saw Stephen as being a manager who led with power, and this was totally against his beliefs. When you watch these 3 clips, you'll see how the experience changed his mindset, even though I think that he still was a leader who led with servant leadership. I think that he was always a leader who led with authority and not with power. But he still found a way to influence and change his behaviors and the behaviors of others and promote growth, which was important to him. And I saw that with him influencing Johanna to become a general manager herself. With Checkers and Rallies being a big business, a large business with employing over 20,000 employees, I still think that it was possible for him to display servant leadership. But what's interesting is I would like to know how this will continue with servant leadership, with there being so many different leadership styles in each of the multiple sites. Is this something that is possible to do? And how do you keep managing and monitoring that and making sure that each site actually follows what you believe in? Rick's goal was to increase the productivity. He wanted to sell more product, and he wanted to sell more product fast. And I'm not a person that eats meat or anything that would be on the menu at Checkers and Rallies. But after watching this, it makes me actually want to go there. And I think that is the goal, that if you want to get your customers in there and you want to get people in there, and that's about the business, but you also have to be able to influence the people that you have working for you. He seems to be somebody that I would want to work for. So I think in the end, Rick definitely is someone who displays servant leadership. And that's it. Thank you.